Typically in Super Metroid, shooting an enemy you can't damage creates a small explosion known as a dud shot. This, and the accompanying sound effect, send a message to the player that they need to use or find a stronger weapon to beat that enemy. This doesn't happen when you shoot Batoon though. Why? Let me be specific. The dud shot appears if you shoot his head with an uncharged beam, but if you shoot his body, the projectile just disappears. To understand how this works, I'm going to have to dive a little bit into Super Metroid's code. Super Metroid handles its enemies and projectiles differently. Enemies have a much more robust set of AI options compared to projectiles, but this also means they use a lot more processing power to run. This is why you can have a cack attack shooting 5 needles at a time with no issues, but if you try to have 5 enemies on screen at once, the game starts to fight back, especially when you try shooting at them. A lot of enemies in the game are actually made up of 2 or more enemies, called possessors. One handles most of the enemy's tasks, while the others add extra animations independent of the enemy's state. That may seem counterintuitive, but it's actually much more efficient than storing every possible animation frame for all of the components combined. This is where we start to run into problems with Batoon though. His body is made up of 13 different segments. If you tried to make each one its own enemy, the fight would lag so much that it'd be unplayable. The solution? Make each segment a projectile instead of an enemy. That may sound strange, but it's actually a really efficient way to handle simple but numerous enemy pieces. Yapping Ma's body? Those are projectiles. Cracks on the Meridian tube? Projectiles. Even Mother Brain's turrets are projectiles. Not just the bullets, the turrets themselves. Unfortunately for Batoon, enemy projectiles are so simple that they only have 4 bits to determine how Samus can interact with them, and no combination of them allows for the projectile to block shots without disappearing themselves. So what did the programmers do? They added an entire set of variables near the end of the game's RAM whose sole purpose is to tell the projectile collision function to block shots and create a dud. Except that last part doesn't even work. I'm getting the feeling this was added late in development. So why doesn't this code work? It's actually quite simple. All computers use registers to store information at the lowest level. The CPU can only interact with memory that is stored in them. The SNES has 3 main usable registers, 1 for math and 2 for indexing. Indexing allows the code to treat memory like an array, where the instruction provides the beginning of the memory block, and the index value tells it how far beyond the base to look to grab the data the user is looking for. When the game is running the code for the broken function, Register X stores the index of the current enemy projectile, while Register Y stores the index of the current Samus projectile. But when the time comes for the game to ask where Samus's projectile is so that it could spawn an explosion there, it indexes by Register X instead of Register Y. Because enemy projectiles index from back to front and Samus's projectiles index from front to back, the value in Register X will be much higher than the number of projectiles Samus would realistically have on screen at any given time. This results in the game reading blank data, which causes an explosion to spawn at position 00, completely out of the player's view. Such a simple error carries with it an equally simple solution. Changing the instructions to index by Y instead of X will cause the game to load the explosions in the correct location, restoring the game's intended functionality. This error was discovered by PJ Boy, who made several notes of it in his disassembly and subsequent documentation of Super Metroid's inner workings. I want to extend a special thanks to him for all the work he has put in over the years creating and maintaining his docs. Super Metroid ROM hacking as we know it would not be possible without his work. If you want to know more about how Super Metroid works under the surface, check out its website or go to the Metroid Construction Wiki for further reading. Happy hacking!